Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Chu. I'm a group product manager here at GitLab, working in the ops section. I'm here with Sid, Kenny, and Anoop to talk about deployment. As a quick background, the, the line between configuring infrastructure and deploying your code has been blurred with the advances in containerization, microservices, uh, so it's less clear. This what used to be distinct jobs are somewhat blurred together. Uh, and the world is moving to a hybrid cloud. Previously, we kind of looked at this from our GitLab CI/CD perspective, targeting the developer persona first. But there's clearly a evolution happening here, and we like to get clear on what our ambition and ultimate vision is in this space. So we've invited Sid to talk to us on this subject to get his early feedback on what he's thinking about in this space. So my first question is, Sid, how are you thinking about the space in general?
Oh, that's a dangerous opening. Do you mind if I do like a 7-minute download of the things I've put in the doc?
Sure.
So I think we are still. So I'm going to make 4 points. The first point I'm going to make is that our CD isn't used as much as you'd expect, and one of the reasons is that we have trouble kind of making sure that everything uses auto DevOps. It's not as usable as it should be. The second point is that there might be a trend where configuration kind of goes from dev to ops, and that is the server runtime and the like 40 plus startups that are trying that. The third point is that we might go in the reverse way. We might go from ops to dev, and we're doing that I'm trying to initiate it in the 5-minute production app. And the fourth one is that we might be disrupted by cloud native with Argo CD. So CD not used as much as CI, and auto DevOps not consistent. So if you look at our stage monthly active users, source code management is the most popular one. Then we have, this must be CI, then plan, and then release. So there's a big gap between CI at 1 million to CD at less than a third than that of that. And I think it is because CD is hard and different, but we're not making it easier for people. We say, hey, we have auto DevOps, like we'll take care of it. But then you look at like GitLab, I don't know, deploy AWS or something like that, if you Google that. And you look at this, and I bet that these templates don't use auto DevOps. Oh, they do use auto DevOps, yay, but they're not enabled by default. But that's okay. So I'm wrong, we're doing better there. But I think there's just we're maintaining like a whole suite of templates, and I think it's super hard to keep them all up to date. But I'm not sure that's the core problem. Then we have dev to ops. So what we're seeing is that the development environment is getting more cloud native. And then if it's in the cloud, you might as well use it for production. There's lots of ways to do that. And you see that a lot of companies are in this space. VS Code Codespaces, Code Anywhere, Gitpod, Cloud9. It goes on and on and on and on. So it's a very natural thing to try to make. It's very hard to make it successful. And I'm therefore a bit hesitant to kind of invest in it. I would say it's important, but I think for now, I'm working with Marcel van Demmeren, and I hope a bit with Kai to kind of make the Gitpod integration better. and kind of see if we can make that successful, because they're already running it, they're innovating, it doesn't cost us anything. Let's just make that a first class experience. And there's Marcel created 5 issues based on comments I had to hopefully make it better. And then they can deal with all the compute and the abuse and all the security problems and everything else while we figure out what we want to do there. Then we have the very counterintuitive thing for us, because we're always like first dev, and then now we're getting into secure, and then ops. We see ops as the end of the line. It might go the other way, because a lot of those kind of 40 startups that are doing the server runtime, they take kind of the dev approach and they try to roll it out to ops. And I don't think it's going to be successful. I don't think companies are going to be like, hey, we'll just like have these endless Docker scripts and files. If you run a production application, what you're going to do is you're going to run it on managed services. You're going to run it on AWS RDS and object storage and all those things. Oh, I see that my internet switched to my mobile instead of the guest network. How is my internet?
We had like one brief second of lag, but it's been good otherwise.
Okay, lag only. Cool. If you're going to use managed services in production, why don't you use it to develop too? Because that would make consistency. You have the same problems, you learn the same things. The more you get ops and dev the same, the better it is. No one's really doing that. So that's what we're trying to get with the 5-minute production app. And now Dimitri is working on the 1-minute dev app based on that technology. It basically is just use GitLab CD plus Terraform to provision that cloud infrastructure for you. And I think it's hopefully hitting a sweet spot, because a lot of these new ways of deploying are like, do it on our cloud, but people don't want to do that. They want to use one of the hyperclouds, right? They want to use AWS, Azure, GCP if they're in the West. There's a lot of good reasons for that. And then they don't want to spend a whole bunch of time kind of adding stateful stuff to it. Like if you make an app, like you get the Heroku app out like in 5 minutes on Heroku, but to make that production worthy, you have to fiddle around with Postgres passwords and things like that and explicitly set up all these services. That doesn't make sense. Like every modern app has a database and Redis and email and all those things. Let's make that super easy. And let's make sure that as soon as you have an app, you can show it off to friends. And then let's use other DevOps. It's really cool. And let's make sure that works well. So as you can tell, I'm excited about that. And I think that would be the key to, it might be the key to winning this. Then what we see in cloud native is that Argo CD has a ton of momentum. And I think we should embrace it and not work against it, and make sure it's a first-class experience in GitLab instead of trying to make an alternative. Because I have the feeling that we're trying to make an alternative, but we're not dedicating the resources to win. So either you embrace it or you make an alternative. Yeah, and then last but not least, we have features like review apps. Super cool. Almost nobody uses it because they're only on if you attach a Kubernetes cluster. It will be so cool if we could do that as a service, where whether you're on SaaS or self-hosted, review apps just work. And you don't need your own Kubernetes cluster to do that. Thanks for allowing me an opening statement.
That was a doozy of an opening statement. And you cover some of the subsequent questions that we had. So to summarize real quick, opportunities. You really like this concept of starting with ops first. If everything's already running in the cloud, why not also do development in the same type of environment to start with, so you have a consistent experience. throughout from writing code all the way to actually running the whatever it is.
Yeah. If I click Web IDE, it should give me not just the editor, it should give me a terminal. It should work like a computer I'm used to, but at the same time, it should be using Terraform to provision all of that on managed services.
And I've heard you sprinkle in the concept of ADO throughout. It's this is a quick thought. Currently, our ADO solution, if I were to characterize it, it makes things easy to get started. But is it necessarily simple? And I'm making a distinction between easy and simple here. My brain is thinking that it's not, because if you want to do anything different, to use GitLab ADO to change things in the way you want it to work for your organization, whatever you may be, it's not necessarily straightforward. And when we think about ADO, I think fundamentally, like, its job is to help people adopt DevOps.
Yep.
I don't know if, and then
I think with ADO, you mean auto DevOps, right? Not application.
Yeah, auto DevOps, sorry.
Yeah.
I
think and so that is, like, we made a lot of stuff automated, but like it doesn't always work. When it doesn't work, you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah.
And it does so much that it's not a good fit for everyone. What you kind of want is this ability to turn things on and off, but really easy, even without making a commit, almost, and like as a service without a lot of setup.
I think that like the combination of the work in the 5-minute production app, I actually don't know what DZ is thinking about for the 1-minute app, but we've seen this pattern with customers where
basically the 1-minute app is the set up user shared RDS server, because that takes 2.5 minutes to boot. So you just have a database on an existing server for the development environment instead of spinning up a completely new server.
And one of the things that we hear from customers is they have a team that's kind of basically doing the 5-minute part of that so that they can give their developers the 1-minute part of it, if that makes sense. They're saying there's some infrastructure, we've stood it up, we've made it available, it's on a cloud provider, or we have common patterns. And then that means your developer who's starting a new project can get to deployed application in 1 minute. But they are a little bit more prescriptive than what we might say in Auto DevOps or the 5-minute production app for what the centralized infrastructure might look like. And I think that the sensing that we hear from ops teams is that they're typically centralized ops teams that are providing a platform to the rest of the developers in their org.
Yeah, and that's basically they're building their DIY DevOps platform, and right. we should probably make sure that we offer something that allows those people to focus on something that's a bigger value add to the business.
I had a question about threats, and I'm wondering if there are you mentioned one threat around Argo, which is, I guess you call it a threat. You're saying we shouldn't think of it as a threat. We should think of it as a partner. Any other players that you think are moving fast in this space that are threats to our ability to perform well with operators?
Look, our main competitor is GitHub. And with Codespaces, they have a pretty compelling product with actions that is moving more into the CD area. So we know that if you have upstream a range, like you can get downstream, and Codespace is pretty compelling upstream. So pretty compelling, like, hey, if I'm going to hack on this repo, I'm probably going to do it by just clicking that button.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I'm sure they'll have deploy this to Azure as a production app at some point.
Right. Kevin and Kenny, do you want to talk a little bit more about the Argo CD and how we are approaching the market? And I have seen demos where we actually work with Argo CD and we work with Kubernetes agent. So there are two alternatives for a customer, but let's just make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah, I guess I'll say Flux is getting incubated in the CNCF. I think the like tool for doing pull-based GitOps work, there will be many tools that do that same thing of looking at a repository and pulling in artifacts. Argo is starting to build more visualization. I would want to own that visual experience and kind of keep everyone in our app, but to the extent that we can leverage just that core functionality of check for a manifest, bring it in, and some of the other capabilities that they're adding, I agree with you said. These are open source technologies. We should try to leverage them as much as possible. Parts of our agent are based on Flux, I believe. So I think of them as separate in that one is a tool, and we are trying to build a more of a product and an experience around that tool.
And specifically to our org design, right? We have almost all backend engineers in Configure. But if we want to do own the visual experience, but we don't have any front-end engineers, are we set up to succeed? And if we are not, should we reconsider either what we build or how the team is structured?
Kevin and Victor and I are working on a +10 investment proposal that would add additional front end for Configure for that purpose. So yeah, I think we definitely recognize that since we want to own that experience, we're going to need some additional investment there. But we can decide if that's the highest priority. But yeah, definitely, I agree. I think that's a big component of it. The thing for me is just that we recognize that there's going to always be tools in this marketplace, and there are open source, heavily supported by large open source organization tools. But we're not trying to be a tool. We're trying to be a product that has a cohesive experience with the rest of their operational day-to-day.
And Sid, what are the sort of signals that you're seeing that makes you feel that Argo CD is, and Argo as a project itself is actually winning the hearts and minds of the users?
Well, there was a comment from one of our people that said it had a lot of traction. So that's hearsay in the company. And I just want to second what Kevin said. Like we want user experience in GitLab. So I think we're on the money as Kevin described it. Kenny, sorry.
Nice.
Right. Kevin, anything else?
One thing that I couldn't quite follow, Sid, is you said there's a lot of players kind of looking at connecting the devs to ops workflow, and there's a lot of inherent risk involved there, and we're working with GitOps. They're pushing on that currently, and we can partner with them. We can look at what they're doing and learn from it. One thing I don't quite understand is, like, it's not clear to me how anybody can create a business in that workflow. Have you seen anyone that's actually been successful?
Great question. We're going to talk about specific companies. I don't have the background on all of them, so I'm going to generalize, and I might call out your startup, and it might not be accurate. Feel free to tweet me to have me apologize. But you have cool startups like Render, and probably if I had to guess which ones were also like Fly.io, Northflank, Railway App. And I think what most of them are saying is like, hey, host your apps on our cloud, because that's the way to monetize. Then you get usage and everything else. And I think ship sailed, like that's not going to happen. Companies said, look, we have AWS and Azure and GCP. That's where we're going to host our stuff. It's already bad enough that it's 3 of them, and all companies are going multi-cloud. But multi-cloud doesn't mean more than those 3. It just means those 3 in the Western world. So I think that's ship sailed, because not only does your company, there's your new private cloud, whatever you call this service that you want to offer doesn't have an enterprise sales force and a license and an enterprise license agreement and stuff like that. And it also doesn't have like the 100+ services you need to support. S3 is now based on over 200 services. So it's not just 100 customer facing services. Like on average, say they have 100 services that compose, that's 10,000 services. You cannot build that as a startup. Like Heroku built Postgres, and then that was it. That was what they could build. From there on, it was a marketplace. So don't force customers to host their production apps in your cloud, because they don't want your cloud. They want to be using one of the big 3 in the West. And they want to be using the awesome managed services like RDS, Aurora, the object storage. Like it's rock solid, it's affordable, it works, it's been tested at scale. So that's what we got to offer. And then Terraform has won. Terraform has become the default configuration language, not Kubernetes, custom resources, not anything else. It's Terraform. Everyone is standardizing on it. Okay.
What?
Go ahead.
One thing, interesting stat Victor recently pulled up is 1/3 of our repositories have Terraform in them.
Yeah, and it has
crazy
momentum.
amount.
It's like it's done deal. So managed services of the 3 hybrid clouds have won. Terraform has won. And people want a button they can click so that they get a web IDE. Okay, how should that web IDE offer the app? Through some Kubernetes Helm chart? No, through managed services and Terraform. That's what people are actually using. Kubernetes is like expensive and complex.
I have a question, because this has always been in the back of my head since I started here, Sid, which is, what do you think that means for GitLab offering compute resources for the purposes of review apps or even production apps on GitLab.com?
Make it easy. So it's a convenience thing. Like if I want a review app, I don't want to spin up my cluster and everything else. So offer review apps as a service, offer CI as a service and stuff like that. But don't get over our skis and think that we're going to host all kinds of production apps.
Okay.
Make it super easy to host them on the clouds I already have. And then maybe I don't have permission from the ops team to hook it up to their cloud yet. Okay, well, we can offer our GitLab account at AWS and host it for you. Like we should have a GitLab account and then many separated spaces, and we can host it there and bill you. If you put up a credit card, it'll give you some free minutes. But it's just a placeholder to make sure that you can see that it works and that GitLab is good stuff, and you can use your company's account later on.
Yeah, I like the distinction between review apps and production, and I think that does make it a more cohesive experience for users, but still gives a lot of choice for production deploys. Cool. I think we're almost at time.
We should offer a ton of things as a service, and I'm going to plug GitLab Plus here, but like backups, geo, managed updates, advanced search, and everything we can. And I'll add review apps, but anti-spam, Jira Cloud integration. Hey, other DevOps as a service, because people have a hard time setting it up. So not against that, just don't think you're going to have the big workloads and make your money on that. Don't constrain people to it.
Kevin, do you want to outline next steps? I know you have an MR
Sorry, could not click unmute. Sure. So for next steps, I'm gonna noodle on what you said, and incorporate them into this distinct direction page. Actually, quick question. Does a distinct direction page here make sense in your mind, Sid?
I care more about the content than the format in this
Yeah.
case, most of the time.
Okay.
when I start with.
Okay. Yep, I'll get the, I don't know quite what to think at the moment because there's quite a number of things that we talked about and quite a number of things I was thinking about previously. I'll try to get the content into a format that makes sense and make sure you get a chance to review along the way as we iterate. Anything else we should cover? Everyone?
No? Thanks, Sid. This was helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking me. Strong opinions, loosely held people, but thanks for listening. Really appreciate it.